I've been playing Minecraft for probably, I don't know, better part of 10 years now, maybe more. I don't know. But I've spent a lot of time figuring out a whole bunch of stuff because there wasn't a whole lot of documentation. But that's not what this is about. This is about RFTools Dimensions, rather. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So what we're actually going to be taking a look at are these, looks like about 11 or 12 different devices. These are all things that you'll be needing to build in order to get started in RFTools Dimensions. You want to build your first dimension? Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and do that during this tutorial. And what I'll do is throughout the video, I'll mark the times, and I'll put in the description below where you can actually get to each piece that we talk about, and of course what happens when we finally do go to our new dimension. And I'll even do that during this video. So let's go ahead and get started. So one of the first things you're going to need to build is, of course, the machine frame. The machine frame is pretty easy. It's pretty standard across all of the RFTools machines, and the recipe is pretty simple. You just need 4 iron, 2 lapis, 2 gold. Looks like this pattern here. You can actually get these recipes straight out of JEI if you happen to be using it, or you can actually click on this little button right here, and it'll show you all the fun things that you can click on, if you happen to be using Project Red like I am. But in this case, we're only talking about RFTools Dimensions. Okay, so you're going to build yourself several machine frames because you're going to need about 6 of them for this. Yeah, 5 or 6 of them. And once you've got that down, you can move on to your dimension builder. Now, this is kind of what does the bulk of the work for you. All right, so what it's going to do is it's going to take a realized dimension, which we're going to talk about in just a minute once we get further down there. It's going to take a realized dimension, it's going to build it, and then it's actually going to power it, which will allow you access to it, so you can go ahead and do what it was you set up the dimension for. Most of the time, I use the dimensions for mining things that I can't necessarily find easily in my own world. So what I'll typically do is I'll find enough of whatever material I'm looking for, and I'll build a dimension out of it, and use that for mining. Moving on to the dimension inscriber. Oh wait, I forgot to actually talk about what the dimension builder does, or how you get to it. So this is what the dimension builder takes to build. You need 3 gold, an emerald, 2 diamonds, 2 ender pearls, and another machine frame. And you can actually see the recipe here. It's pretty straightforward, not super difficult, but again, you got to get lots of machine frames because you're going to be using a lot of them. All right. So the next piece that we're going to talk about is the dimension inscriber. Now this is where you're gonna design your dimension. Now initially you're not really going to do a whole lot, because really all we're going to do during this particular video is realize a basic plain undesigned dimension, which will be the first one we develop. So the dimension inscriber is what allows you to do that. So this is what it takes to build. You got 3 iron, 2 ink sacs, another machine frame, because we talked about those before. You got some redstone up here, and then you got a piece of paper. Okay. Next piece we're going to talk about is the empty dimension tab. Now, you can see one here in the item frame. It looks like it belongs on there when it's normally straight like that. So I was tempted to do it this way, but I left it this way. Anywho, the dimension tab is what you're actually going to have your dimension built onto. That's what the dimension inscriber writes to when you build a dimension. So in order to get one of these, you're going to need 4 redstone and 5 sheets of paper. And that's going to drop out one of these empty dimension tabs. And you can see that I've got one sitting in my inventory right down here. So over here, now we're going to talk about safety for a little bit. We got a couple of items here that we need to talk about. Before you actually decide to head off to one of these dimensions that you build, you need to practice some basic safety. Okay, you need to be able to get back, for one, because the dimension that you build is not going to have a teleporter or a matter transmitter when you get there. Okay, if you want to have one there, you're going to have to build one and take it with you, and of course a power source. If you don't have a spare power source, make sure that the device is charged before you go. That way you have at least a little bit, and then you can build your power source there. be it some sort of engine, or if you have a couple of these capacitor things that I'm using over here, these advanced power cells. If you got a couple of those fully charged up, you can take those with you. Okay, but the charged porter is what allows you to get back to where you started. But again, you have to configure it, and you have to do this before you go there. If you happen to have the materials with you, you can build it, but the problem there is that you will not have a matter receiver to tune it to. Okay, so you need to make sure that you tune the charged porter before you go. At any rate, you need to at least have 9 redstone because you need to make a block of it. You need to have 2 iron ingots and 4 ender pearls. And in case you haven't figured it out just yet, you're going to need a lot of ender pearls for this particular mod. This is how you do it. You got the redstone, you got your iron, you got your ender pearls. And once you've got that built, you're going to want to go ahead and find a way to charge it. I happen to have a wireless charger up and running right now. I think that one came out of Ender.io. Yep, Ender.io. It happens to be sitting on a creative power cell, but obviously you're not going to have a creative power cell in your game unless you happen to be playing solo. Okay, so that wireless thing is going to charge the charged porter that I've got in my inventory down here at the bottom. The next bit that we're going to talk about is the phase field generator. Now, this is somewhat less important on your first dimension build because you're probably not going to run out of power. Okay, and that's the big thing, is making sure that your dimensions are powered. If the dimension that you transport to doesn't happen to have any power in it when you go there, this field generator, this phase field generator, will give you enough time to break out your charged porter and get home without hopefully getting smished in the process. I've teleported my fair share into some unpowered dimensions, and it's pretty ugly trying to get your stuff back when it's strewn all over a dimension that's basically made you flat. So you want to make sure that you get your phase field generator. The way to do that is go ahead and get some of these dimensional shards. Now again, this is talking about stuff that you get in the end. All right, so you're going to need an ender pearl. And I think it's a blaze rod. Let's look. No, some blaze powder, which you get from blaze rods. So you have to have been to the nether as well, and found the nether fortress to get some blazes, and killed them all, or at least some of them anyway. Once you got that, then you can get some redstone. You got your dimensional shards, and then of course you can make your Eye of Ender. And once you've got that, you can build yourself the phased field generator. And it even tells you in the tooltip that it gives you some temporary protection when visiting an unpowered dimension. Moving on to the next pieces. These are actually the later stage pieces. These are the pieces that you're going to need after you build your dimension. We're talking about some safety over there with the charged porter and the phase field generator. These are how you're going to get there. All right, so the first one is going to be your matter transmitter. Now this one is the one that looks like a little blue circle on the floor. You can see it over there. Okay, when you're, here, I'll jump up a little bit. You can see the blue circle and the yellow circle. So the blue is going to be the one that sends you. And in order to build that, you will look at this. You got 3 ender pearls, 3 iron ingots, 2 redstone, and another machine frame. Just like I said, we're going to need a bunch of those. All right, you're going to lay them out like this. And you get your matter transmitter. Okay, again, this one requires power. This is how you get to send yourself to another dimension. This thing right here is how you're going to get yourself back, your matter receiver. Okay, now remember we talked about the charged porter, that thing that I'm holding in my hand over here. Okay, we talked about the charged porter. The matter receiver is what you're going to tune that charged porter to, and we're going to test it out over here. You're going to tune it to that matter receiver so that when you get to that dimension, you can actually get back from that dimension. So in order to build one of these, you're going to need, again, pretty much the same recipe as the one just before this, but backwards. Okay, so it's going to be upside down. You've got the ender pearls on the bottom and the iron ingots on top. You still got the redstone in the middle and the machine frame down the center. Okay, but once you built this, then you've got now something that will send you to a dimension and something that will bring you back from a dimension. All right. And the second to last piece that we're going to talk about today is going to be this dialing device. Now this dialing device is fairly straightforward. It's what dials your transmitter to go to another dimension. Once you've built that dimension, it's going to show up in a nice little list, and I'll actually show you what that looks like in just a second here. But in order to build your dialing device, you're going to have to get 6 redstone, 2 redstone torches, and another machine frame. Okay, once you built that, you can go ahead and lay it out with the matter transmitter and the matter receiver in this configuration, or you can put the dialer on top of the power source, whatever it may be. I happen to like this one because it's fairly clean. It's in the ground. It's not going to cause me any issue to walk past it, run over it. It's not going to get in the way, which I know has been a very frustrating point for me in many of my various homes over the last 10, 15 years. Stuff getting in the way, especially torches, redstone torches to be specific. But the last piece we're going to talk about after we've actually built our initial dimension, and we're going to go ahead and do that right now. Now, we talked about already the unrealized dimension tab. We talked about the dimension Enscriber. Now I'm actually going to steal this one because we need to build it. Oh, of course I'm not, naturally. So I'll just go ahead and grab it from up here. Not an issue there. All right. So the dimension Enscriber does not require power, but you do need to use it, of course, to build your dimensions. So you're going to need to take your empty dimension tab. Remember, I had one sitting in my inventory already. Let's get rid of that. We've got the empty dimension tab. We're going to drop that in this spot right here. Now, once you've actually got your empty dimension tab in there, if you don't want to make any configuration changes, if you just want some random dimension and you want RFTools Dimensions to generate it for you, all you need to do is click on this store button, pick this thing up, and then go drop it in your builder. It'll take about 20 to 30 seconds to build that, if it even takes that long, and you'll be good to go. In this particular case, I'm actually going to name this, and we're going to call this RFT Dim 1. So we're going to go ahead and store that, and you'll notice that it changes color. Once it changes into a color thing, instead of being just black and gray, you know that it's a realized dimension tab. So even if you don't have Wayla or any of the other ones like Hyla or whatever you want to call it, any of these little pop-ups that tell you what's going on when you put your mouse over stuff, if you don't happen to have that particular mod, then you can tell that it actually did what it was supposed to do by telling it changed color here. So we're going to take that out, we're going to drop it in an inventory, and then we're going to back out of that. Okay, now I've already built the Dimlet Workbench, but we're not going to talk about that just yet. What I am going to do is I'm going to come over here to my dimension builder. Now you probably see all of this power stuff sitting on top of it. And believe it or not, there's actually a lot more underneath the ground as well. Because what it does is, in this particular case, you can see that I've got some conduit running from this cable straight into the back of the dimension builder. There is a limit of 50,000 RF or FE per tick per side of the dimension builder, but it takes a massive amount of power if you want to build a really cool dimension. Now in this particular case, we're not building anything super cool because obviously it's just a plain unconfigured dimension. We didn't do anything to it, and it's going to be pretty random what happens when we go in there. All right, what we're going to find when we get in there. Once you start configuring those, each of the dimlets that you find is going to be kind of on the pricey side. It adds to how much power it takes not only to build it, but to keep it running. And you'll see what that means in just a second. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take this, and I'm going to right click on it. And of course, I've got this little spot up here that looks just like this, oddly enough. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and drop this in there. And you're going to see the progress bar go up pretty quick. All right, like I said, it didn't even take 20 seconds. So it's got the world built now, and at this point, it's no longer powering the dimension builder. It's trying to pump all of its power into the dim. So you notice right here, it actually tells you what the maintenance cost of this particular dimension is going to be. Because we didn't specify anything, it automatically just generated its own stuff. And what it generates is completely random. It's supposed to be at any rate. It's based on the seed of the world that you're in. So if you actually made two blank dimensions side by side, they would be almost identical. There are going to be slight differences here and there, but they would be pretty similar. Just like when you generate a new world with a regular seed, it does the exact same thing here. Okay, and you notice that on here, it's even got the name RFTDim1, just like I said, and of course ID3 to the right of that. That just tells you what the ID number is for RFTools Dimensions itself. Okay. So we've got that. It's now fully powered and it's maintaining it nicely. We could actually take this tab out and go wander around with it, and it will actually maintain power for a fairly significant time. Generally speaking though, I will normally leave mine in the dimension builder because it keeps it fully powered, and it means that I'm less likely to run it out of power and die while I'm in the dimension. But if you're comfortable with it, like I am today, we're going to go ahead and take it out. If you're comfortable with it, you can leave it in your inventory and take it with you, and you can monitor that power level as you wander around in that dimension. Okay. So we've done that. Now, what we want to do is we actually want to go ahead and experience what that dimension looks like. Now, if you remember back when I was talking about the dialer, which is all the way over here, the dialing device, kind of looks like that green thing. It's the circle with the lines on the side of it, but you got these gray lines on the right side. You'll notice that it's basically facing vertically right now. When it's facing horizontally like this, the lines are going to be on the bottom, or at least theoretically they will be. It depends entirely on how the rotation is when you place the device. We're going to use this one over here. They're connected, but that's not really an issue here. So you're going to see that there's a blank line up here. Now, the reason for that is that we haven't actually named this transmitter yet. Now, of course, I placed all this stuff before we even started, but I'm going to go ahead and give this a name. We're going to call this home, just for entertainment value. Okay, you could set it to a private one if you wanted to. You could set the teleportation beam to hidden if you wanted to. And if you decided you wanted to make a blacklist or a whitelist in this particular case, you would actually type in the names of these people. So I would want my name in this list because, of course, I want to still be able to use this thing when I'm actually outside of this particular module configuration screen. So if I didn't put my name in there and I marked it private, it doesn't know who owns it, even though it will sometimes say it does. These things will actually usually tell you who they're owned by, the power cells, once you place them, but apparently not in this particular case. Maybe that's just on my server. I don't know. But so I've named the transmitter, I've got my dialer, and you'll notice now that it says home. So now it's going to be dialing the home transmitter, and it's not super worried about anything. Okay, so at this point, we've got one dim down here that's called, or one dimension rather, that's called RFTDim1. That's the one we built. That's the one that's currently sitting in my inventory right now. It's right there. All right, so we're going to go ahead and dial that once. Okay, now you'll notice that this thing turns green. There are some other machines that we can build to make sure that this thing changes color if it's not safe to go there, but that is for a different video. Today, however, we're just going to take a chance. We're going to go and we're going to see what this place looks like. So I hope y'all are ready for our first interdimensional transport. And we are gone. All right. So this dimension looks a little strange. There's not a whole lot here. A couple of pigs. Oh look, we've got orbs of, it looks like cobblestone and dirt. Giant orbs and nothing else. Now, because I'm in creative mode, I can of course fly. If you happen to have elytra, or if you happen to have an angel ring on your server, or any other sort of flying mechanism, you can of course jump between these things and fly if you want to. Let's find out what this is. It is cobblestone in the small tile variation. down here. Now, this is just one of those interesting features that you can randomly end up with in RFTools Dimensions, and it's actually kind of cool. There are some times where you will actually make these giant orbs, they call them huge orbs, on purpose. You'll choose to do that. You've actually got these little buildings down here too. Let's see if this one's occupied. No, this looks like a corpse. No, it's bone blocks. So on some of these dimensions, you're going to end up with bone blocks in them, and a lot of times they look like giant rib cages. I'm still not entirely sure what they're supposed to be, but I'm thinking that they're probably some sort of archaeology project. Throughout the dimensions, if you're as you're dimension hopping, it's a really good idea, of course, unlike what I just did now. It's a really good idea to set yourself, if you have JourneyMap like I do, you can set yourself a bookmark to where you are. So in this case, I'm going to set a waypoint, and I'm going to say entry point, because I need to know where I am. And yes, I have a very loud keyboard. Many people have commented on it before. All right, so set myself a waypoint so that I know where I'm going. And it should light itself up here pretty soon. But I do want to find one thing, and this may take me a minute. Alright, so that didn't actually take me long. I'm probably not going to edit that out. It does, however, have lava in it. So, what this is right here, this is a this is called a Dimlet building. This Dimlet building, they're usually littered about most of the dimensions, unless, of course, you configure it not to be. In this particular case, I didn't configure it not to be here, so I'm going to want to go ahead and take care of some of this lava here, and of course, make sure that it's not actually going to kill me when I try to step into... Oh, go away. Alright. Yeah, that's not going to work so well, is it? Doo-doo-doo. Yeah, I know, I didn't need to jump to do that, but it is what it is. Alright, so really you have an option. You can either knock off the door like I normally do, or you can just hit the button and it'll open the door for you. Now, inside these buildings, you're going to have 3 little item frames, much like I did at the beginning of this tutorial, and you're going to have a chest. And there's always going to be a light inside, but it may or may not be on, depending on whether or not it's a dark dimension. But each of these dimensions, or dimlets rather, on the wall are going to be, they're going to be different. They're going to be completely random, and it's entirely up to chance which ones you get. But what these are is ways, of course, to configure what your dimension looks like. Now, that, like I said, is not the purpose of this particular video, but I did want to point out that they are, in fact, here. Okay, and you can, of course, collect these the same way you normally do from item frames. You just left-click on them, and they would end up in your inventory. Obviously, I'm in creative mode, so that's not going to happen here. In the chest, you're normally going to end up with at least one Dimlet parcel. Sometime, well, I can't even say normally. It's a fairly frequent occurrence. You're also going to end up with a lot of Dimlet pieces. So the parts that you're going to need in order to build a Dimlet. And I'll actually demonstrate what those do here in just a minute. And then, of course, you've got more of those control pieces that I was just mentioning earlier. The primary purpose of this was, of course, to show you what it looks like when sometimes you allow a random dimension to be generated for you. All right, now you can see obviously that these giant orbs are loaded with whatever it was that RFTools decided was going to be there. You could have decided what these were going to be, but again, that's for the next video. All right, so what we want to do is now we want to go home so we can talk about the Dimlet Workbench real quick. All right, so now I'm going to break out my charged porter. Well, because I was silly and forgot to set a destination on my charged porter, I had to die to get out of that dimension. Go figure. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go ahead and get another one. And there's actually 2 different kinds of charged porters. You've got the regular charged porter here, which only allows you to set 1 target. And then you got the advanced one over here, which allows you to set multiple targets. and it takes it holds a lot more power too, because it uses one of the super awesome. It uses the charge porter, but it uses 4 more redstone, or 3 more blocks of redstone in order to build it. As you can see, they're both charging up nicely. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to set a destination for the first one to this one here. Now, in order to do that, you just hold down Shift. Oh, look, my name just showed up on there. I'm going to right-click, which means that my charged porter, that's the first one without the little plus sign on it, is now destined to this particular matter receiver. And I'm going to do the same thing on the advanced charge porter. Okay, so now it says receiver 2 is added to the charge porter. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to do the same thing on the advanced charge porter as well. Okay, now in order to change which one it goes to, which one the advanced charge porter goes to, you have to hold down Shift and right click in the air. It can't be the normal one. Okay, so now you notice that it's got 2 different ones in here, and you can choose whichever one is highlighted to send you back to whenever you use that in the future. And you can even apparently change the name. Oh, no, you can't. It just lets you think you can. All right. So once you've done that, and then you decide to go ahead and jump off to another dimension, we're going to do the same thing again. Only this time, I've actually got a way to get home. Go here. All right, so here we are back in our dimension, and we've got 2 little piggies going wee 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 all the way home. Okay, so now we actually do want to go home, and we've actually used a little bit of the power from this matter receiver. And if we want to keep coming here, we're going to need to do one of 2 things. Either we're going to need to figure out a way to keep this thing charged, or we're going to have to bring power with us the next time we come. You don't want to let this thing get down to 0, or you're going to have to get a matter booster on your other end and hope that it actually works well enough to push you through even though this thing has no power. The normal way to do it is, of course, to bring yourself a matter transmitter with you and a power source, be it one of those advanced power cells or some sort of engine if you have one. Or if you're playing creative, you can, of course, use the creative power cells as well. And then, of course, set that up over here on this platform or somewhere of your choosing. I usually use the platform because it's the easiest way to do it. You set it up wherever you choose and make sure that all of the pieces have power, including your dialing device. Because if you don't have the dialing device, it's going to be kind of hard to get back out if you don't have either the charged porter or the advanced charged porter. We've got the advanced charged porter here, and I'm just going to right click in the air, and then of course it'll tell me starting teleportation, and it'll immediately drop me off back at the teleporter that I targeted with it, based on the Shift right click version, so your sneak right click of the advanced charged porter. Now the charged porter doesn't do the same thing. You can't just click in or hold down Shift and click in the air, or in this case sneak right click and change your destination, because it's only got one. So I just tried that, and I don't know if you can hear me clicking, but I'm right clicking and it's not doing anything. Okay, but now I'm just going to regular right click and it's going to send me over there. Interesting, huh? And I can do the same thing with the advanced charge porter. I can just right click, and this is the fun part about the matter transmitters and the matter receivers, is that you can use them for same dimensional transport. So even if you're staying in the regular dimension, so you're normal as opposed to the nether or the end, or even if you happen to be going to the end or the nether and you want to use a transporter like that, you can. You can put one of these things in the end if you want to. You can put one of these things in the nether, so that you don't have to sit there and worry about the nether gates or the end gate, which I know has it can sometimes be difficult to follow or find. But I do know that I remember that I told you earlier that I would talk about the Dimlet Workbench before I let this video get down to the end, and that's what I'm going to do now. So the Dimlet Workbench is where you're going to use. It's what you're going to use probably to store at least the beginnings of your Dimlet part collection. If you remember from the last piece, we had a whole bunch of Dimlet pieces. I don't know if we get a whole bunch of them here too. We get a few. So you usually end up with at least one of these, which is the Dimlet base part, And you're going to need one of these to build this Dimlet Workbench. Actually, let's go talk about that now. You're going to need one of those Dimlet base parts to build the Dimlet Workbench. Okay, so here you have the recipes. You're going to need 2 crafting tables, which I thought was kind of interesting, but you do need them. You've got 4 gold nuggets. You've got 1 machine frame. Yay with the machine frames. And of course that Dimlet base part that we were just talking about, that thing right there. Okay, you're going to need all of that set up like this. You grab your Dimlet Workbench, plop it down on the ground, like I did over here. Okay, and oh, not that one, this one. All right, so in the Dimlet Workbench, you can search for particular dimlets that you're interested in building if you happen to know the name of one. So like in my case, I happen to know that there's a dimlet in here for not tundra. Wow, I'm completely spacing out on this. Is it ice? Yep. So sometimes I want to see ice plains spikes. Okay. Now sometimes I just want it to take whatever dimlet pieces I have over here, put them down here where they're supposed to be, because it's got a list of them, and I can't move the mouse to show you exactly what these things are, but you've got a dimlet base piece, you've got a level 1 controller, you've got a level 1 power dimlet piece on there, you've got a level 1 memory piece on there, and then you've got a terrain dimlet that has, or terrain controller dimlet rather, that has a material absorber or a biome absorber to the right of it. That's that odd-looking gray thing that's kind of sparkling black. In order to build these dimlets on your own, you have to build, of course, the terrain absorbers and all that fun stuff. But again, that's for the next video that I'm going to do. There is a lot of stuff in the next video. I know, I've said it a bunch. But you can actually use these things to kind of cheat your way into having these dimlets. And I say kind of cheat because you would have a whole bunch of dimlet pieces over here, and what this does is it's kind of like JEI, but just for dimlets, in that it gives you a list of the available possible dimlets, and you can sit there and scroll through them if you want to. If you happen to like a particular kind of biome, you can make a dimlet for it. Okay? You can actually build yourself a dimlet that you can program your dimensions with. But again, that's for the next video. But I did want to give you a heads up on that, just to let you know exactly what to expect when we do start talking about this in the next one. So, on that news, and on that note, we've got a whole bunch of stuff here that we've talked about, and in the event that you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and drop them in the comments below. If you think I did something wrong, or if you think there's a better way that I can do something, please let me know. I know that I could probably reduce the number of these things that I'm using if I infuse them. Again, that's for another video. You can see the little infused 0% up there. But I know I could probably do that better, and maybe you have a cooler design that I haven't thought of yet. This one just takes up the least amount of space, at least horizontally anyway. I know that does go down to the ground 3 more blocks just like this does, and go up underneath this thing. But like I said, this thing has a limit of 50,000 RF per tick on each side. So it can only take in, I mean, even if you put it on the front, what is that, a total of 300,000 RF per tick, give or take? I think that's what the maximum is. But yeah, yeah, we'll see what it takes to actually build a real configured dimlet and a real configured dimension in the next video. So if you like this one, please feel free to subscribe, like it. If you want to go ahead and suggest another video for me to do, because I've learned a lot of this stuff over the last couple of weeks, feel free, go ahead and drop a comment for me, and I'll think about doing a video on it. And hey, no, you never know, if I get enough comments on something, I'll probably do a video next. At any rate, this is Akesh signing off, and I hope you all have a fantastic time Minecrafting. Bye!